Look, memory can change the shape of a room, it can change the color of a car. And memories can be distorted. They're just an interpretation, they're not a record.
In a classic experiment by Elizabeth Loftus and Stephen Palmer, they showed participants a video of a car crash. Some were asked how fast were the cars going when they hit each other. Others were asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other.
Smash.
When the leading smashed question was asked, the participants gave higher speed estimates. And they were more than twice as likely to report seeing broken glass, even though there was no broken glass in the video. In another study, a car went through an intersection with a stop sign, and when the participants were asked a question that insinuated that it was a yield sign, many witnesses reported that they remembered seeing a yield sign. There was no yield sign, they never saw a yield sign, but now they remembered seeing one. The yield sign has been planted into their memory. This is called the misinformation effect, which is what happens when our memory of past events is altered by misleading information. But Professor Shades, this would never happen to me. I have an excellent memory. Do you though?
Please, brother. We have to check that, mom.
Let's test it. Read the following list of words. Read them once only. No cheating. Now pause the video and write down as many words as you can remember. And do it now, play along, it'll be fun. Okay, ready? Pause.
Let's pause, stop the video, and think.
How many words did you write down? And does your list of remembered words include any words that were not on the list? Chances are you wrote down the word sleep.
Sleep?
Even though it wasn't there. You see, there's a common misconception that memory is like a video camera. You record something, and then you play it back. But that's not how memory works. Memory has a constructive nature. What people report as memory is constructed by the person based on what actually happened, plus additional factors such as experiences, expectations, and knowledge. That's why many people write down the word sleep, because it is associated with the other words on the list. And that's why many witnesses reported seeing broken glass in the car accident video, even though it wasn't there. They just had the expectation that glass would be broken, especially when the cars smashed into each other.
Smash.
In one experiment, people were shown an image of a magnifying glass. They were also asked to imagine a lollipop. Later, they remembered seeing a magnifying glass and seeing a lollipop. They couldn't differentiate between imagining a lollipop and seeing a lollipop. They misattributed the source of the memory. I know a guy who thinks that the co-founder and CEO of Facebook is called Mark Zuckerman. He loves sharing that piece of trivia whenever he gets the chance. That is the Mark Zuckerman. If you tell him that's wrong, he'd probably say, "Yaar, I heard the name 1,000 times." Yeah, I'm sure you heard it many times. From yourself. Every time he repeats it, he becomes more and more convinced that that's the name. The more he says it, the more ingrained it becomes in his mind. In one study, some participants remembered that when they were kids, they met Bugs Bunny and shook his hand at Disneyland. This, of course, would be impossible, because Bugs Bunny is a Warner Brothers character, so he wouldn't be allowed at Disney. Elizabeth Loftus and her colleagues sneakily planted this false memory by asking them to evaluate a fake Disney ad that contained Bugs Bunny. They later asked them, "Tell me about one of your childhood trips to Disney. Do you remember meeting Mickey Mouse?
Do you remember?
Minnie Mouse? The Little Mermaid? Bugs Bunny?" A lot of them said they remembered meeting Bugs. And when they pressed them for details, they started saying things like, "Yes, I shook hands with him. I grabbed his tail. I saw him eating a carrot."
What's up, Doc?
These memories felt real, but of course they were impossible. In one study, some participants remembered being lost in a shopping mall as children. Some recounted that episode in vivid details. The old man who rescued me was wearing a flannel shirt. In reality, none of these people had ever gotten lost in a mall. They produced these false memories after psychologists told them that their parents confirmed that they had gotten lost.
Brother, maybe somebody lying that you...
After 3 suggestive interviews, the psychologists succeeded in having 25% of the participants develop these false memories. In other studies, similar methods were used to plant memories that when they were kids, they nearly drowned and were saved by a lifeguard, and that they were attacked by a vicious animal, and that they accidentally knocked down a bowl of punch at a wedding and they spilled punch all over the parents of the bride, and that they took a trip on a hot air balloon. None of these things happened. In the movie Inception, they planted ideas in people's minds in their dreams while they were asleep. But these psychologists were planting memories in people's minds while they were awake. As we have seen, memory could be quite unreliable and can be manipulated. You've heard the advice, don't believe everything you hear. Well, I say, don't believe everything you remember. They met Bugs Bunny and shook his hands at Disneyland. Shook his hands? Who shakes hands? Shook his hand. They met Bugs Bunny and shook his hands. Lish hands. Shook his hand. They met Bugs Bunny and shook his hands. Yaar, I've heard the name 1,000 times. I've heard the name 1,000 times. That is the Mark Zuckerman. That is the Mark Zuckerman.